Her name was Lauren, and she lacked the traits typically associated with the military. She was a mother nearing her 40s, with a freckled face, a fondness for wine, and a husband who could still lift her with one arm, even after he'd quit the gym and she'd put on a bit of weight. On Earth, she was just a regular woman who was born with a unique skill and an exceptionally sharp mind. On Earth. The containment room aboard the gray vessel Vorthax Pride looked more like a prison than a spaceship. The walls curved inward like the inside of an egg, their surface rough and lacking maintenance. 3 figures stood before her, and Lauren had to admit that they looked exactly like every conspiracy theorist's wet dream. The Greys were tall, easily 6 feet, with elongated limbs that seemed too thin to support their bulbous heads. Their skin had the texture and color of wet cement, stretched tight over angular bones. But it was their eyes that truly unsettled. Massive black orbs that reflected the room's weak light like oil slicks. What really caught her attention, though, were the exoskeletons. The suits moved with them like second skins, adjusting and flexing with an organic fluidity that Earth's best engineers could only dream of achieving. The one in the center, Lauren had already designated him leader in her mind, gestured with a 4-fingered hand. His companions moved to either side of her chair, their movements eerily synchronized. She could hear their laughter through the helmet speakers, a sound like wind chimes being dragged across broken glass.
"Look at this specimen,"
the leader said, his voice emanating from the helmet. The universal translator they were using gave his words an oddly formal cadence.
"The humans send their weakest to negotiate."
Lauren tested the restraints binding her wrists to the chair's armrests. Some kind of energy field, she noted. Invisible, but solid as steel. Interesting.
"I am Idir,"
the leader continued, pacing in front of her with slow steps.
"My companions are Noara and Sev. We represent the collective's interests in this planet."
Noara, the one to her left, leaned in close enough that Lauren could see her own reflection multiplied in those black eyes. Such soft skin, such fragile bones. How did your species even survive to achieve spaceflight?
"Luck,"
Sev suggested from her right. Lauren found herself smiling, not the reaction they expected, judging by how their laughter faltered.
"Do you find your situation amusing, human?"
Idir asked, tilting his oversized head.
"Oh yeah, immensely,"
Lauren replied, settling back in the chair as much as the restraints allowed.
"I haven't been kidnapped in, it must be 3 years now. I'd forgotten how theatrical some species can be about it."
The Greys exchanged glances. At least, she assumed that's what the subtle head movements meant.
"You will not find it amusing when Earth learns the price of your return,"
Idir said, recovering his composure.
"Your government values its negotiators, we are told, especially those traveling on diplomatic vessels."
Lauren made a non-committal sound, her eyes tracking something invisible in the air.
3 minutes and 21 seconds.
The room fell silent, confused by the seemingly random statement. What? Noara's translated voice carried a note of confusion.
3 minutes and 21 seconds,
Lauren repeated, still watching something only she could see. Sev made a gesture that might have been the Grey equivalent of scratching his head.
"Is this some human negotiation tactic? Speaking nonsense to confuse us?"
"Oh, no,"
Lauren said, finally focusing on them again.
"That's just the time until I'm safe. It's less now, actually. It's 3 minutes and 8 seconds.
The laughter returned, louder this time. Adir actually slapped what passed for his knee, the gesture oddly human despite his alien form.
Saved!
He wheezed between chimes.
Little human.
Do you see where you are? This vessel is cloaked in the mountains. Your primitive scanning technology cannot detect us among the rocks.
3 minutes, Lauren said.
Just a weak human girl.
Sev mocked, circling her chair.
Look at her. Soft. Small. Probably never held a weapon in her life. Earth sends us their housekeepers and expects us to tremble.
2 minutes and 41 seconds, Lauren continued. Would you like to hear a story while we wait? The countdowns are just boring. She didn't wait for their reply. When I was 7, I told my mother that I knew when the school bus would arrive. Not the scheduled time, the actual time, down to the second. She thought that I was just a weird kid. When I was 12, I could predict traffic patterns in my head, tell you exactly when each light would change on our route to school. And by 15, I was counting cards without trying, seeing probability cascades that let me win every time I played. The Greys had stopped laughing, but she could feel their amusement radiating through their body language. They tested me, of course. Lots of very serious people with very serious clipboards. They called me many things. Neurodivergent was the polite term. Some said I had perfect recall, eidetic memory, pattern recognition off the charts. One scientist actually called me a living battlefield computer after I predicted the outcome of a few military simulations without seeing the full battlefield beforehand. 1 minute, she asked, almost as an afterthought.
This is ridiculous.
Adir scoffed.
You expect us to believe.
Oh, the military didn't care what label they stuck on me, Lauren continued. They just knew that I could see things others couldn't. And in a universe full of chaos, I could find the patterns. When Earth built its first real fleet, they didn't want an admiral who could give inspiring speeches or look good in uniform. No, they wanted someone who could see the battle before it happened. Someone who could track 1,000 variables and know with absolute certainty when and where each piece would fall. 10 seconds.
Even if this fantasy were true,
Noara said, though her voice had lost some of its mocking edge.
you are here, captured, helpless.
5 seconds, Lauren said. Oh, and I need you alive for interrogation, so you might want to scooch away from the window.
What window?
Sev started to ask. 3? The Greys looked around the windowless room in confusion. 2? Adir opened his mouth to speak. 1. The wall to Lauren's left exploded inward. Not a random blast. A perfect circle cut by military-grade plasma torches. The shaped charges that followed sent chunks of the Grey's ship's hull spinning. 5 figures in Earth Fleet combat armor burst through the breach, moving with the coordinated skill of a group of ants. Lauren had seen it all in her head. The approach vector, the breach point, the exact timing of the soldiers' entry. It unfolded exactly as the patterns had shown her. The Greys barely had enough time to reach for their weapons. Noara managed to clear her sidearm from its holster before a stun blast caught her center mass. She crumpled like a marionette with cut strings. Sev tried to dive for cover, but Private Johnson was already there, having anticipated the movement. Adir, to his credit, tried to use Lauren as a shield. He made it 2 steps before Sergeant Elliott's thrown knife severed the control node for the restraint system. The energy fields dissolved, and Lauren rolled out of the chair just as Lieutenant Commander Davis's stun rifle dropped Adir mid-stride. The entire operation took 8.7 seconds.
Area secure,
Davis reported. his voice crisp to the helmet speakers.
No casualties. 3 subjects ready for interrogation as ordered.
Lauren stood, brushing imaginary dust from her comfortable mom jeans and stretching muscles that had started to cramp from sitting. Around her, the rescue team was already securing unconscious Greys with restraint cuffs designed specifically for their physiology.
Thank you, Davis. Please make sure they're comfortable. I got questions about their cloaking technology, and cooperation's always better when the subjects aren't nursing bruises.
Yes, Commander. Davis replied without hesitation. Lauren walked over to where Deer was beginning to stir, his large eyes blinking in confusion. She knelt beside him, making sure that she was the first thing he saw as consciousness returned.
Hello again? She said pleasantly. I believe you were saying something about weak human girls?
The terror in those black orbs was gratifying, but it was the sudden understanding that made her smile. They'd heard Davis address her. He knew now who she really was. Not some random diplomat, not a helpless captive. Commander Lauren Smith, Strategic Operations Director of Earth's Combined Fleet. The woman who had turned humanity from prey to predator in less than a decade. The pattern seer who never lost an engagement.
Next time someone tells you a story,
she said, standing as the medical team arrived to check on the passengers.
Might want to listen. You never know when they're telling you exactly how things are gonna end.
She paused at the breach point, looking back at the restrained Greys.
Oh, and, Dear. Earth doesn't pay ransoms. Never have. Just come and take our people back.
Lauren stepped through the breach onto her own ship, leaving the Greys to contemplate their monumentally poor choice in kidnapping targets. Behind her, she could hear Adir trying to explain to the interrogation team that they didn't know, they couldn't have known. But that was the thing about patterns. They were always there, visible to anyone who knew how to look. And Lauren had been looking her whole life.